Hey gang, so we are 2 more weeks, although I just did this one last week because I was on vacation, so I'm catching up. So now I'm doing it actually on time. So new roadmap's out, and we got the new numbers in. Again, I'm going to kind of try to focus in on just a few relevant things that I think might be coming this year, or that I think other people are thinking will come this year that I don't think are coming this year. A little bit of speculation, a little bit of an update what I'm going to be doing on this channel pretty soon. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with this after the break. So catch me then. Okay, for those of you who haven't seen this before, basically what I do here is what a lot of content creators do. I go through the roadmap roundup and kind of look at the release view. One of the things that I do that other content creators don't do is I actually go through the progress tracker and talk about the things that are ending pretty soon or that I think are significant. I used to go through all of them, and it just would end up in really bloated videos that some people would genuinely enjoy, but I'm kind of trying to relate to more people with these. So I got a little list here of sort of double handful of things that I think are probably pertinent either to the interest of the community or to the interest of the project itself. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get into this. I like to start with a couple caveats. The first one being that CIG uses the Agile system, and the Agile system goes in 2-week sprints. So a dev or a group of devs is given an item for 2 weeks, and they're told, go ahead, work on this for 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, they say, we need more time, we need a new tool, we need another team to come in and help us, this is a dead end, or we've got it, we nailed it, here you go, it's ready to go out. And they just kind of keep going in these sprints. The catch with that is that when you're trying to track that in a system like the progress tracker, this may be 100% complete here in week 3 of quarter 4 and still have a ton of work left to do. It's just these are all the sprints they have planned out. So just because we look at something and it looks like it's 100% complete and we think it should be on our hands by now, there might be a ton of work that needs to be done on the back end, including more tools, or there might be dependent tech like actor stats 2 might require NPCs to be doing something. It might require the subsumption tech. So even though it's finished, it has to wait until this other tech to be finished, and then they finish it off of that. And so they do another sprint. So just because something's 100% done doesn't mean that's 100% done. Second caveat that I like to throw out there, I am just a dude on the internet. I am just looking at the data that I have access to, that I can see, unlike Board Gamer and Astropub and InfoRunners and like a whole host of the bigger name guys that have been doing this a lot longer. They actually have connections with CIG. I don't. So they may be getting insider information. I'm not. So the information I'm going off of is the same information you have access to. Other than that, let's get going. I'll have a little update on the channel on what I'm going to do at the very end. So let's go ahead and start with the roadmap roundup. Notable changes for September 6, 2023. Release view. The following cards have been added to the release view for the 320 column, targeting a launch with Alpha 320.0, and they have said they're going to have a 320.1. The rumor right now that CIG hasn't refuted, and I've been kind of pushing for at least the short term, is that they're going to be dropping 4.0, which is server meshing, which is pyro, which is jump points at the end of the year. So there might not be a 3.21, but there will be a 3.20.1 probably. That'll fix a few things. Now whether 4.0 goes live to the verse, I'd be shocked. I would expect it to have been released to the PTU if they're going to release it, but I think one of the reasons they're playing that close to the vest, 2 reasons. One, save it as a big surprise for SitCon, even though most people are kind of speculating on it. They kind of jumped on the train as far as that's concerned. The second reason is that they're not totally sure it's going to happen, so they don't want to say 4.0 at the end of the year and everybody's like, yay, and then they're like, we can't do it. Road to Pyro Part 5. Mirai Fury LX. We've known about this one. For whatever reason, they have it under the unannounced vehicles. I wish they'd stop doing that with so many. One or two unannounced vehicles that are kind of a surprise is cool. When everything is a surprise, nothing is a surprise. Anyway, the Mirai Fury LX is a surprise because it's an unannounced ship. They have not moved it out of the unannounced section, so I'll show you which one of the unannounced ships I think that one is. Building, implementing, and balancing Mirai's Snub Racer, the Fury LX, as a game ready vehicle. It is a cool looking vehicle, little X-Wing. Progress tracker. With this published, we've added Q3 schedules for the NAPU gameplay feature and vehicle gameplay feature teams. North American? Yeah, North American PU feature teams. These are existing deliverables previously on Progress Tracker and are simply being reallocated. Additional deliverables will be added once they're scheduled out. That's all for this week. Join the discussion on Spectrum. Don't do that. So the trick with the release view is if you look for this little orange dot right there, that'll tell you that under that section there's something new. So we know there's nothing new under locations or gameplay from the last time I did one of these. So we can scroll down here and there's the Mirai Fury LX. Everything else here we've known about. Now that we're out of NDA, I'm Evocati, and this was in Evocati, I think, last time I did it. Now it's the live PTU. Vehicle handling mostly works pretty well now. Like, the vehicles feel good. They can still kind of stop on a steep incline. I think they start rolling back now, but the fact they can even make it up like a 70-degree slope is kind of problematic, but they feel a lot better when they're driving. It's not like driving around a helium balloon. So that's pretty cool. Tumbrel Stank, it's up there. Crusader C1. That one's good because when the C1 drops, which was supposed to be 3.20.1 is when the C1s do. We're getting the A1 with 3.20, which it hasn't hit testing in the PTU yet. They usually do hold back the newest ships until the last patch. But the Crusader C1 Spirit is probably waiting on tractor beams. A lot of ships have tractor beams. So that is a good sign for ship tractor beams, at least for some vehicles coming in near the end of the year, or at least 3.20.1, maybe. I would assume they wouldn't be dropping the C1 Spirit without the tractor beam. They might as well just hold off until that's in the game. But C1 Spirit, Cutlass Black, a lot of Drake vehicles have tractor beams now I think about it. The Cuddy Black, Caterpillar, the Connie Taurus, obviously the whole CS tractor beams, SRV would be the big one. Let's get into the progress tracker and talk about these things I want to talk about. So I'm just going to kind of roll through these and talk about the things that I think are interesting. If I miss something that you're interested in, that you're curious about, throw a note down in the chat below and I'll probably answer it. The good thing about this being a small channel is that I can typically engage with my community because there aren't a lot of you. And the comments, there's typically like 10 to 15. I can certainly reply to 10 to 15 comments. Anyway, let's scroll on down. So first one, Impost and Tokyo. This is one that I actually thought that we were going to get for Alien Week this year. So 3-4 months ago, I thought that we were going to get the Suntoki, and then it didn't pass its sort of review. And now it's looking like it's going to be a next year asset. So anything, this is Q4, anything that's out here at week 12, this is just as far as they've got sprints planned. Like I was saying at the top, just because of the way they do this, nothing's going to go into the new year. They basically have a span here of about a month, month and a half, where they do planning and meetings and kind of discuss what they're going to do through the next year. And then they start planning out the sprints. It doesn't mean that nobody's working during that time, but it does mean that typically this roadmap or this progress tracker is not updated as often, or it's not as accurate. AR, map marker, and system rework. This is one that I was really hoping would come this year. I thought it was coming 319, and they just kept doing work on it, which more power to them. I would think one of the theories I've been running on the last couple of these is that they probably wouldn't roll out a bunch of new mechanics if they were to roll out 4.0, just because 4.0 and server meshing, true server meshing, where we're actually rolling into different servers in order to move from like Pyro to Stanton or from Hurston to Crusader, I guess. Just another way that they were talking about having servers break it down depending on how many people are in an area of space. But anyway, one of the things I thought would be low-hanging fruit that they could put in that patch would be the new UI systems and kind of new traversal. Again, this is one that people that have been watching this for a while are probably rolling their eyes, because I've called that this new UI is going to be dropping into the next patch for probably about 3 patches now. So I'm going to do it again, maybe. But AR map marker, our map is kind of jacked up. This would allow us to, it brings the map into building blocks, which is much faster, much less resource intensive, so it moves faster. The map that we have is very janky. Map marker would, it says to me that you might be able to set your own waypoints, like, hey, everybody come to this point right here, and it flashes it up for anyone in your party. Or you could say, I'm in the middle of the space, look at this thing I found, and then people that have access to that could go to that exact location. So Benny Henge might not be as hard to find as it used to be. Artificial gravity. So one that I thought was a dark horse for this year was the engineering patch. Things like artificial gravity kind of support that it could be dropping in 4.0 if they were to do that. My theory is still that you wouldn't want to drop server meshing and a very convoluted, complicated game loop like engineering in the same patch, because they're both going to be breaking things, and it would be very hard to kind of narrow down that this is breaking things over this thing. If everything's broken in the game, people are just going to stop playing it and go do something else, and then you're not testing probably the most important feature about this game, which is the server meshing for a massively multiplayer game. But anyway, even though this is wrapping around week 5, which would put it in the territory for 4.0 PTU at the end of the year, I would still think this would be a next year asset. So like 4.1 would probably have engineering game loop. I think 4.0, they'll try to keep it as flat as possible. Just adding in Pyro and all those locations is going to be huge. ATC service just wrapped. This is another one that I think, even though it's wrapped, it's going to stretch out again. There's going to be UI involved, and there isn't any UI involved in this. But you don't need air traffic control until there's a whole bunch of NPCs flying around, or until they kick up servers to like 600 people per. Then you have people flooding the zone on a location. There needs to be some sort of air traffic control to keep control of that. But in theory, it wrapped. In actuality, I'm guessing it's going to be a next year thing. Okay, Bounty Hunter V2. This is another one. It's in week 12, so it's definitely a next year asset. A lot like engineering, I would expect Bounty Hunter to fall into post 4.0 patch, just again to keep it from getting too convoluted and too complicated. So probably 4.1, 4.2, something like that would be my guess. I always thought that they would hold off on bounty hunting until Pyro dropped, the next iteration of bounty hunting, just because that makes more sense. Bounty hunter hunting for pirates and Stanton has like the weight of law behind him, and people can get crime stats and stuff like that. If a bounty hunter goes into pyro, that's a much different situation. That's the Wild West. All right, so building interiors. This is kind of a cool one. This is going to expand out the gameplay, especially in the cities. Well, exclusively the cities, by quite a bit. When they said building interiors, I was thinking they were going to talk about, one or two levels. Instead, they had plans for entire buildings. Like at the top, we have offices. In the middle, we have apartments and living spaces. And then down below, we have like the underground and the sewer and all that, or the stores and then the sewer. That's quite a bit more complicated than I was expecting for this. I wouldn't think they'd push it as far as Cyberpunk. You're never going to have Night City in the verse. But it could greatly expand the areas we have to play in and the gameplay that we could come up with and that they could incorporate in there could be kind of cool. Especially if they have like non-combat ways of interacting with those areas, like stores and infiltration, NPCs. I've always thought one of the most effective mission givers would be like a bartender that's just dropping rumors, and maybe 70% of the rumors are just absolutely bunk and BS, but 30% of them, you might follow that lead and be like, whoa, that one paid off. But always thought that was kind of cool. In other games, obviously, they're not doing it in this game. The bartenders typically ignore you and wipe down the counter. So it's a little bit too close to real life. Chapters, Squadron 42. So the other thing I've been saying for a while, I said this at the end of last year, was I said, it looks like Squadron 42 is moving into beta by my terminology of what beta is, where they've it's feature complete, but they're polishing. And as the year went on, that just kept solidifying. Now the running rumor is that they're going to announce Squadron 42. So I called it last year. I think they're going to say 2024, end of year, Squadron 42 is dropping. And hitting that date is going to be difficult. But I think they can do it. All right, Crusader Spirit. Again, you can kind of see that it stretches all the way out over here. And anything else that I have that's hitting that line, I'm like, it's not dropping this year, it's next year. This is because you've got the A1 is probably here, the C1 is probably here. This is the E1, and it's going to go into next year, and it's not dropping until we have passenger missions. Just like I don't think the C1 drops until we have tractor beams. Same thing with the E1. We're not getting that one until later. C1 I think is doable. Tractor beams are coming along. Fire hazard, just a quick one on this. This is in theory wrapped, and it's probably fine. We've seen what the fire looks like, and I have never seen fire like that in another game. It looks surreal. Really cool stuff. I don't think that we're getting fires until we get the engineering game loop, and I don't think we're getting the engineering game loop until next year. So again, like I was saying at the top, just because it's 100% complete and it looks done and they're doing shows on it, it's waiting on something else. So it's waiting on engineering gameplay until it's relevant. Because if we don't have a way to stop the fire or tell that there's a fire on our ship, it's not a very fun game loop. If you're just flying and you just kind of happen to see that the lighting is brightening in your bridge and you turn around and everything's on fire, that's not very fun. Jump points. So jump points, obviously we need this before pyro. A lot of the pyro assets I'm going to point out here are wrapping pretty soon, so that 4.0 at the end of the year thing is looking pretty solid. Jump points has been polished or has been in polishing for about 2 years. Like VFX has had multiple chomps on it and all that. Let's see, what is vehicle gameplay feature team? So that's actually navigating the jump point. Jump points will be cool. Even in the earliest days, they kind of had a vision what they want jump points to be. So fingers crossed, end of the year we'll start seeing it. Map and radar system rework. So this goes along with the map AR marker thing up near the top. Again, maybe a 4.0 asset. I would think if it was a 3.20 or 3.21 asset, we'd be seeing it by now. 3.20.1. I don't think we're getting a 3.21. Anyway, again, building blocks, making it so it's much easier to use. The radar system, we've been hearing about that, where you can actually occlude, hide behind rocks, do low flying, and it actually matters. Like if you're flying low enough and there's a mountain between you and someone who's trying to target you, they'll lose target on you. They won't be able to target you. A vehicle on the ground won't know you're coming until you pop up within range of the radar or within sight of the radar. Anyway, that'll be cool. I think it's going to be a 4.0 asset. MFD 4.0 asset. Mission Manager app, there's another kind of indicator of the UI and kind of mobiGlas rework, which is right below it. All of these UI improvements, I would think they would drop that with 4.0 of just new system, new controls. Here you go. This it all looks new now. Would be a good way to do it, because these UI things should actually improve performance because they're all building blocks. All the old stuff was Flash, which can look cool, but it's very slow. Building blocks is much quicker and more efficient. So good sign with that. So I'm just going to kind of talk about all these new missions. This is another thing that would kind of be, I don't think that we'd get them for 3.20.1, but 4.0, it would be cool to drop a bunch of the new missions on us as well. So you get new UI, new missions, because the missions don't ever break anything. They're contained. They don't touch everything, or when this isn't working, that isn't working. The missions are kind of self-contained. NPC scheduler service, again, I think that's a 4.0 thing. Origin X1, once again, I want to point out there's no downstream teams here. So downstream teams are audio, GFX, VFX. None of them are in here. Man, it's a little tiny space bike. I know it's just one person working on it, but it's been on the blocks for so long. And this will actually bring up another point, is you can sort of see that there's two teams working on this, even though it had a 93-week sprint. It really just, one team worked on it way back here, and then another team, I think one single dev, picked it up over here and started working on it again. And with that much time, sometimes it's easier just to start over from scratch, which might be what happened. I'm not sure exactly what is so complicated about the X1. If it was our first hover bike, I would assume it would have something to do with that, but it really isn't. So it's probably the animations, the fact that it has doors that slide open and kind of contain you. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, end of the year, man, I would think so. I would hope so. Maybe a 4.0 asset doesn't really go with 4.0. Like, it's not an outlaw vehicle. It's a executive's bike. Anyway, persistent hangers. This one could sneak into 4.0. It's sort of the next level of the cargo gameplay loop. You actually have hangars where you can store cargo and move it on and off of your ship into either the cargo bay or onto the freight elevators. It looks like it's wrapping pretty soon. We haven't heard anything about this. I would assume this would be a 4.0 asset or later, so next year. Persistent streaming and server meshing, this is the big one. So obviously, even when Pyro drops, this is still going to be getting worked on. So even when we're flying from Pyro to Stanton and back, this is going to keep going and going and going, because just like persistent any streaming, they're going to have to polish it and get things working and fix bugs, that kind of thing. So yeah, that one's going to stretch out, but it doesn't preclude that we get it at the end of this year. Physical damage and breakability. This was Maelstrom was the name of this system, so I don't know why they haven't changed it to Maelstrom, but this is ships breaking apart and how they break apart and damage and stuff like that. It's really cool. I would assume this is going to be one of the talks at CitizenCon, is Maelstrom, what it looks like, how it works, what it'll do for the game. So keep an eye out for that. More UI stuff, the player HUD. Again, wrapping down here. So could be a 4.0 asset. I would be surprised if they dropped in 3.20.1, but they might. 3.20.1 might just be a bunch of UI stuff and end the year on a bang. So now we're down into all the Pyro stuff. You can sort of see all the Pyro stuff wrapping around here. Just is kind of a speed bump. The Pyro stuff is wrapped many times over the years, and they've kept working on it. And of course, a lot like server meshing, once we get Pyro, they're going to keep adding stuff. Probably not to the same degree as Stanton did, because they have the tech now. They don't have to build the tech, build one thing, see how it works, and then build a bunch of them. They already have the one thing. They know how it works. They have a bunch of them. They could just drop in 30 stations, and they know how stations work. So there you go. Pyro could be coming at the end of the year, at least to the PTU. Quantum simulation, again, this is another one. If you have server meshing, it takes the pressure off the NPCs. They won't just be dead in the water when a server gets overloaded. So quantum simulation, we could start finally getting what Tony Z was talking about in 2019. So fingers crossed for that. RSI Polaris, I know people love this ship, and I'm honestly one of them. Note it's ending here. Also 37 weeks for this ship. No, right now they're just kind of exploring white box. Fully expect there to be a talk on the RSI Polaris. They always do like a ship talk or ship shape during SitCon, and this will be no different. Probably, maybe IAE too. It might be IAE instead. One of those two, they'll do a ship talk, and we'll get to see more about the RSI Polaris, or they'll do like a little teaser at IE, and then SitCon they'll do. Salvage vehicle munching. Unfortunately, it looks like this one's going to be a next year thing. So for all you salvagers out there, next year you'll be able to eat ships. Seated item handling. You know what's weird about this is that I might have to actually test this in the PTU and see if it's in. I don't think it is, but it might be worth checking. Basically, if you're riding shotgun in a car, you can actually ride shotgun in a car. You can carry a shotgun and be shooting. Security Network V1. This will be cool. This will involve infiltration missions, but it'll probably also involve hacking, which is up above. I didn't click on it. It's been done for a little while. I'm assuming it'll also be white hat hacking, where someone will be trying to hack their way onto your ship or board it, and you'll have to counter them to lock them out. Hopefully that's part of it. But this V1, wouldn't be surprised if we hear about that at SitCon too. That would be a good talk. Especially spread over 2 days could be a good one. Although I am assuming day one is going to be Squadron 42 release and celebration, and day two will be the PU Here's 4.0. They probably wouldn't do that backwards, because then people would all jump on the PTU as they do. Sliding, there's another traversal thing. We got mantling and jumping in 3.20 that's coming, that works pretty well now. We saw it CitizenCon last year. I thought we would get all the traversal things at once. So there's sliding, swimming, EVA, ladder climbing. They were going to have more options on prone. So when you're prone now, you just look weird. It's like your pelvis is stuck in the ground. Don't make that dirty. And your torso just kind of twists around like this. It's weird looking, and I'm sure it has bothered them. And you could just kind of spin around while you're on the ground. It's bizarre. But they're going to fix that, and that's another one of the traversal things. I thought they were going to drop all the traversal things at once. Instead, it looks like they're kind of rolling it out piecemeal as they polish them up. They're all Squadron 42 assets, so they're priorities. So we're not going to be getting them in 10 years. We're going to be getting them within the next year. Subsumption editor integration, again, If 4.0 is bringing better NPC actions at the end of the year, we're on target for that. Tumbrel Stank, even though it wrapped, there's no downstream teams here, so no GFX, VFX, or audio. Those people will still have to jump in. Still shouldn't be too hard to get it. It's a small tank. Yeah, shouldn't be too hard. Tumbrel's pretty well established with their screens, iconography, and like voices and all of that. So yeah, could we get that one for 3.20? Yeah, I think so. Unannounced ship. So let's get into here. So let's see. This one at 11 weeks, that's your Fury LX. So eventually this one will be going away and going back up top. Fury LX is just a Fury without any weapons, so it's simpler. They just had to pull it off and tweak the numbers a little bit. Makes it a little bit easier to deal with. Which leaves the question, what are these three? I think these two are probably the cutter variants. So we know there's an exploration and a touring or something like that. Science? I don't know. Scouting. But anyway, I think both of those, I think one of these is the, these are both the cutters. So if you take both of those out, we're still left with this guy. This is 34 weeks for a straight to flyable, so it's a small vehicle. It's either a small vehicle or a variant of something that we already have. What do I think it is? It does have a downstream team on it. So audio, once they jump in, I don't think we're getting an unannounced ship for 3.20. I wouldn't be shocked if we got the two cutter variants, because that's not super impressive for IAE. Just a stab in the dark, something that would be cool is the tier 0 of crafting. So right now in the Vulture and the Reclaimer, you can use RCM to create multi-tools and tractor beams, and I think med pens. I'm not sure if you could create water. That would be cool. I have to check that. But you can craft things. I wouldn't be shocked if there is like a tier 0 crafting ship in the game, like a starter crafter, would make a lot of sense. Things like the Pioneer are going to have that established before they start building a ship that big and complex. Weapon misfire and wear, this is the last one I'm going to talk about. Only reason I want to mention this one is if they drop this on us, they're going to have some way to repair your weapons. Basically, since the game got out of the hangar module, we've been able to land somewhere and repair our ships. We have never had to repair our guns. So are we going to be doing this ourselves? Do we lay it on the ground and sweep it with the multi-tool? Do we have to take it to a shop that fixes it? We don't know. Maybe the crafting ship would be part of that, like a tool maker or cleaner ship. The USC Eureka. Who knows? But anyway, gang, that's all I got for this one. You got any questions for me? Leave them down below. Got any comments for me? Obviously, leave a comment. That's all I got for this one. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and catch you next time. And this is a bonus for those of you who stuck around. So I do have a copy of a certain game that I will be playing shortly. So I thought that it might be fun that if you see this, it's not going to be Star Citizen content. So hopefully you see that popping up in the near future. I'll do a playthrough of Starfield and kind of my thoughts on it as we go. Again, the people that were claiming that Starfield was going to kill Star Citizen, I never thought it was. Starfield isn't a threat to Star Citizen the same way Star Citizen isn't a threat to Starfield, honestly. Now, you want to talk about Elite Dangerous in Star Citizen, those two games are kind of competing against each other. But even then, if people can scratch an itch with one type of game and not the other, then that's fine. And Starfield is very much a space RPG, whereas Star Citizen is a sandbox MMO. You're making the story with tons of other people, whereas in Starfield, you're playing the stories that are prearranged for you. So think of it more. Starfield is more like playing a D&D session where you have some freedom, but there's still a game master kind of guiding you through things. Whereas Star Citizen is very much just kind of grabbing a bunch of G.I. Joe toys, going out in a yard with a bunch of friends and just playing. Interesting way to look at it. All right, gang. Catch you next time.